Now, the first of the 6 major developmental stages in your life reveals your primal attitudes towards safety in the pre-birth into the first year of life. Do I feel welcome and wanted versus antagonism in my body and my world? Now, a body theme is an enduring constellation of structural, that is, postures you take, and characterological, that is, attitudes, positions toward your life that reflect basic beliefs about yourself and your world, and how to survive and grow in it. Each stage of human development is associated with a body theme that's adaptive in its formation, but can become dysfunctional in its persistence into adult life. All humans face the basic themes of safety, abundance, control, freedom of expression, sexual identity, and intimacy. And we all adopt attitudes and postures around them. Each body theme operates on a continuum from fear-based and restrictive to integrated and highly functional. So there's no good or bad body types. It's how we use them that makes a difference in our life. The theme of safety in the first stage of life may be portrayed in one's body as fragmented and highly constricted, or as secure, sensitive, and integrated. All humans pass through each of these 6 developmental stages and have elements of each body theme. For most humans, however, one stage will stand out with regards to its structural and characterological influence. The defenses of this stage will most often serve as the default mechanism when a person is under stress later in life. For the psychic sensitive, their reaction to stress is to split off. And if leaving physically is not possible, they'll leave mentally or psychically. Now, this is useful for us all in knowing and accepting our own idiosyncrasies and those of others. It's also particularly useful for a practitioner attempting to help a client under duress in both assessing and successfully addressing the client's core issues with techniques that access and help integrate both sides of their brain. Psychic sensitive development. So the approximate age of emergence of the psychic sensitive structure is from prenatal to 9 months. When unintegrated, this theme exemplifies a pattern in the body of holding together against the fear of annihilation. The formative dynamic is thought to correlate with the primary caregiver's responsive style of ambivalence, hatred, or anger, which begins actually in the womb. If the fetus is immersed in the mother's stress hormones, nutritional deficiencies, emotional and psychological fears, it can support the formation of a negative core belief that the world is unsafe. A cold and hostile place such that the infant is cut off from experiencing the love of others toward themselves. Neurologically, at around 6 weeks after birth, the infant is increasingly capable of interactive facial and eye expressions, making mutual gaze interactions possible. The already active amygdala, a part of the limbic system, gives the infant the capacity to have emotional experiences linked to outer events. Now, although the amygdala is best known for its function in aversive conditioning, this ability only matures sometimes after birth. This maturation difference permits early attachment regardless of parental behavior. Until the capacity for aversive learning has matured, the infant will continue to turn towards an insufficient or abusive caretaker, but will respond with stress and fear in doing so. So let's take a look at the brain here and the limbic system. We can show figure 1. This diagram of the limbic system and prefrontal cortex shows a rapid scanning, quick response system that mediates fight-flight mechanisms. The amygdala, as mentioned, in particular, has been shown to mediate fear responses. It is predominant in infancy before the cortical system and its higher cognitive functions have developed. So without the inhibitory input from the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, overactivity of this system in infancy can lead to habituated fear-based body and behavioral responses later in life. These can be unconscious in us and just seem normal. This next graphic shows 3 pathways of the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve controls 80% of the nerve fibers in our body. It's a major component of how we experience life and the responses that we make towards life. So there are 3 major branches here of the vagal nerve. One is the myelinated social vagal system, which is active under conditions of normal interactions. For instance, when the baby smiles, gurgles, and makes different noises to invite food, sleep, or play. It's the green pathway on the left. 2, when the child is stressed, this organization gives way to the phylogenetically earlier fight-flight system. In the infant, this first means crying and increased startle and gripping reflexes. With more intense activation, the infant screams while flailing and twisting in an increasingly disorganized manner. This is the yellow pathway in the middle. Finally, 3, if there are no outlets for fight or flight responses, the most primitive system and the dissociative parasympathetic coping strategy becomes dominant. Here, the infant withdraws, becomes passive and quiet or immobile, and shows little or no interest in contact or food. That is the red pathway on the right. Now, the prenate and neonate infant is just beginning to develop a sense of separate self and is mostly dependent on their caretaker for basic modulation of arousal. If frequently abandoned or treated with hostility, habituation to a constant level of fear and distress becomes the, quotes, normal resting state. This is thought to be most common formative dynamic of this character structure, this psychic sensitive. Isolation impacts the emerging self-regulation, and the infant's experience is not offset the later formation of internal representation of self and others. It will seem hostile and depersonalized. The ensuing basic right in question becomes, do I have the right to exist? Or even, do I exist? How do I exist in a dangerous world? Am I real? The infant's original feeling state is one of terror and rage at being cut off from parental love. It can become deeply repressed as the body is experienced as an uncomfortable, unsafe place to be. The infant therefore tends towards fragmentation and movement with corresponding shallow breathing. The major muscular tension is in the joints, with split energetics in the diaphragm and in the mind-body, exemplifying dissociation or disembodiment, disjointed and frozen with minimal breathing, unfocused and operating in a survival manner with weak ego strength. The eyes generally appear distant, fearful, fixed, and vacant. The reaction to stress is to split off or to dissociate. I know this is a lot to take in right now. We're going to look at the other side and what to do to get out of this position. But I'm going to ask you to try an experiment right now as you're watching this video. As you look at the screen, do not focus on my face. Stare blankly as though you're looking right through me, avoiding looking at my eyes or making any contact with me. Hold the thought in your mind, I could be hurt for just a brief period. Now, notice how you're breathing and feeling in your body. You can let go of that posture. This posture and attitude towards life, in other words, not making contact, tends to minimize breathing and the feeling in one's body. The vernacular expression is of being, quotes, spaced out. When a child has no recourse to leave an uncaring or threatening environment, their natural recourse is to leave their body and exist mainly in thought or fantasy as their safe place. Now, we all have this capacity as a survival instinct. It's important that we have it. But for some of this, it becomes a normal way of being. Early family dynamics for the psychic sensitive may include a message from mother that is, don't frighten me, with an underlying, I don't want you. You bring up feelings that threaten me. For example, vulnerability or hostility or murderous impulses. Father's message can be, don't scare your mother because I'm afraid of her. Under these conditions, the growing child becomes increasingly more comfortable existing in the realms of imagination and speculation. The developmental challenge becomes one of existence versus need, with safety being the predominant issue and concern. Their unconscious theme is, I can't exist if I don't get too close to myself, my own feelings, or others. Since they exist in their mind for safety, there can be a corresponding tendency towards being above it all, superiority to others, with an air of, I'm above this earthly realm. I don't exist here. In the most extreme, these individuals have a pattern of not being able to persist with undertakings or relationships long enough to be of lasting benefit. So let's look at plate 1. So the fear-based polarity of the psychic sensitive posture is characterized by a deep holding pattern in the core of the body and a habituated parasympathetic dissociative activation, which leaves the skin and the extremities cold. Movements are often stiff or clumsy, and there is little spontaneous movement. Breathing is shallow. Now understand, I'm talking about the extreme fear-based part. This is not all psychic sensitive, as you'll see in a minute. Breathing is shallow, and the general physical impression is of a person who has withdrawn as far as possible from aliveness. The body is characterized by deep frozen holding patterns in and around the joints. Twists and significant differences of organization between right and left side of the body, as well as between different parts of the body, say the head and the torso. This somatic pattern has elements of the disorganized flailing of the infant we talked about a few minutes ago in severe sympathetic distress, frozen in a matrix of dissociative, primitive, parasympathetic inhibition. Emotionally, this pattern personifies the lack of a sense of self. Due to a history of splits between parental word and emotion, that is, face in the eyes expression, anxiety and panic underlie estrangement from the self and dissociation from inner feelings and the body. There's often a deep fear and lack of joy. Adults with the extreme fear-based polarity of the psychic sensitive traits describe their inner experience of the self as alien, disconnected, fragmented, and deadened. The person is primarily identified with the mind and often distrusts and dislikes the body and its unruly feelings. The social world and other people are felt to be alienated, stressful, or innately hostile. Therefore, there's a tendency toward difficulty in forming relationships and to react rather than act and move out into the world. So this drawing shows the transition that can happen with integration. The body on the left is obviously more fragmented, and the body on the right more integrated. And they're both the psychic sensitive theme. It's not like you become a different theme. It's just that you learn the gifts of that theme, you relax and integrate into areas that have been frozen or held. This is the point of our use of breathwork and bioenergetics in this class. In its integrated state, individuals with the psychic sensitive theme are aligned with the underlying truth of their sensitivity and safety, bringing their free spirit into creative expression in the material, and with the ability to express safely in a balanced and grounded body. Most authors agree that the strengths of the integrated state are creativity with many talents, sensitivity, psychic intuitive abilities, and responsiveness, with a rich inner world shaped by analysis and intuition with mystical connection. The compensatory mechanism of leaving the body to realms of thought and imagination have led a person to develop a heightened state of sensitivity to the nuances of life, energy fields, and theoretical worlds. An artistic example of this is Van Gogh's painting of the Starry Night. With the great gifts he gave the world, he was able to integrate enough and find a safe place to paint, even though he continued to wrestle with the inner conflicts, relationships with his own body, leading to actually cutting off his own ear, possibly trying to eliminate the auditory oversensitivity. A scientific example of this theme is Albert Einstein, whose theoretical prowess served us all. He stated that imagination was more important than knowledge, and reportedly left the world saying, humanity's most important challenge in the future is to determine if we, quotes, live in a friendly universe or not. This is the quintessential quest of the psychic sensitive theme. Integration involves bringing together safety in one's body and world while retaining and sharing the gifts of sensitivity, artistry, or mental abilities. So again, things that might have originally been developed out of defense, leaving the body and becoming extra sensitive, when integration happens, now you have the best of both worlds. We still have sensitivity, intuition, mental capabilities, and now we're able to use them to create and share in our world. On the basic survival level, soldiers sent out into the jungles of Vietnam who were highly psychic sensitive survived more frequently sniper attacks by sensing where danger was. Some psychic sensitives with partial integration might show high proficiency in athletic or artistic endeavors with their bodies, becoming expert figure skaters or dancers. But until they're completely integrated, they're still doing so in somewhat of a mechanical way that lacks the warmth and freedom of full integration. Breathwork is a prime tool to assist with integration with the psychic sensitive theme.